Good morning. Let's see what Plato has for me today. Menexenus. Day 4. Menexenus. Having effected one half of their purpose, they were in the act of attempting the other, and none of the Hellenes dared to assist either the Erythraeans or the Athenians, except the Lacedaemonians, and they arrived a day too late for the battle. Reminds me of someone I know. But the rest were panic-stricken and kept quiet, too happy in having escaped for a time. He who has present to his mind that conflict will know what manner of men focus. He who has he who has present to his mind that conflict will know what manner of There's nothing funny in the text. Will know what manner of men they were who received the onset of the barbarians at Marathon, and chastened the pride of the whole of Asia, and by the victory which they gained over the barbarians, first taught other men that the power of the Persians were not invincible, but that host of men and the multitude of riches alike yield to valor. And I assert that those men are the fathers not only of ourselves, but of our liberties, and of the liberties of all who are on the continent. For that was the action to which the Hellenes looked back when they ventured to fight for their own safety in the battles which ensued. They became disciples of the men of Marathon. Now, I have no idea why I was giggling like that, but now, as I was continuing to read, as I finally got some sort of, although I'm very close to the brink, so I shouldn't speak too much of it, I was kind of like seeing myself actually present when Socrates was giving this speech. And I don't really know how Socrates... No, I do. Plato was quite into the politics of the day, but Socrates stayed quite aloof of it. So, I mean, he mingled with the people, but it was always individually, one-on-one confrontations. He says that in the Apology. So I think he was quite ironic about the greatness of the nations. So I am going to give myself the benefit of the doubt and imagine that I was actually present when he was making this speech and watching people be completely enthralled because it's such a powerful speech in the way that political speeches are supposed to be powerful, sweeping you up and praising everyone you love and disdaining, if that's the right word, everyone you despise, and that I was one of the people who knew him. I'm just going to pretend like that's the case. And that I was giggling in the background like crazy because he was putting up such a good show. Okay, I hope I can now compose myself. Otherwise, I'm going to give his game away. So, compose yourself, Lizelle. To them, therefore, I should not try not to smile, because then it's just not going to work. To them, therefore, I assign in my speech the first place, and the second to those who fought and conquered in the sea fights at Salamis and Artemisium, although he is talking of war here, and he was a soldier, so he did take war seriously, probably. Or maybe not necessarily. He did his duty, like he did his duty in staying in Athens, even though he could have escaped, and also escaped death. But he did his duty to the state. So maybe war to him was also just that, doing your duty. For of them too one might have many things to say, of the assaults which they endured by sea and land, and how they repelled them. I will mention only that act of theirs which appears to me to be the noblest, and which followed that of Marathon and came nearest to it. For the men of Marathon only showed the Hellenes that it was possible to ward off the barbarians by land, the many by the few, but there was no proof that they could be defeated by ships, and at sea the Persians retained the reputation of being invincible in numbers and wealth and skill and strength. This is the glory of the men who fought at sea, and they dispelled the second terror which had hitherto possessed the Hellenes, and so made the fear of numbers, whether of ships or men, to cease among them. And so the soldiers of Marathon and the sailors of Salamis became the schoolmasters of Hellas, the one teaching and habituating the Hellenes not to fear the barbarians at sea, the other not to fear them by land. So what I'm thinking now is, for someone so focused on the individual and individual self-transcendence and giving birth to helping the individual to give birth to their true ideas, I almost want to say. Because it's not necessarily themselves, because in one dialogue, Socrates, when he speaks of himself as a midwife, he speaks of like he's helping young people to give birth to their thoughts, and some of the thoughts turn out to be just wind, just air. And yeah, so not necessarily the individual, but to help them to give birth to their thoughts. And this is a funeral for individuals, men, actual men. And yet it is the custom to praise the history of unknown multitudes. So there is something, I don't know if ironic is the right word. I still have a lot to learn. Third in order, for the number and valor of the combatants, and third in the salvation of Hellas, a place the battle of Plataea. And now the Macedonians as well as the Athenians took part in the struggle. They were all united in this greatest and most terrible conflict of all, wherefore their virtues will be celebrated in time to come, as they are now celebrated by us. But at the later period, many Hellenic tribes were still on the side of the barbarians, and there was a report that the great king was going to make a new attempt upon the Hellenes. And therefore justice required that we should also make mention of those who crowned the previous work of our salvation, and drove and purged away all barbarians from the sea. These were the men who fought by sea at the river Eurymedon, and who went on the expedition to Cyprus, and also sailed to Egypt and diverse other places. And they should be gratefully remembered by us, because they compelled the king in fear for himself to look to his own safety instead of plotting the destructions of Hellas. And so the war against the barbarians was fought out to the end by the whole city on their own behalf, and on behalf of their countrymen. There was peace, and our city was held in honor. And then, as prosperity makes men jealous, there succeeded a jealousy of her, and jealousy begot envy, and so she became engaged against her will in a war with Hellenes. On the breaking out of war, our citizens met the Lacedaemonians at it's them that came a day too late, right? At Tanagra and fought for the freedom of the Boeotians. The issue was doubtful and was decided by the engagement which followed. But when the Lacedaemonians had gone on their way, leaving the Boeotians, whom they were aiding, on the third day after the battle of Tanagra, our countrymen conquered at Eunavita and righteously restored those who had been unrighteously exiled. And they were the first after the Persian War who fought on behalf of liberty in aid of Hellenes against Hellenes. They were brave men and freed those whom they aided, and were the first two who were honorably interred in this peculiar by the state. So I have to read Marcus Aurelius this week or next week, and I've started, and this makes me think of him saying he should abandon his desire to record things from the past. Maybe there is in all of us maybe especially in men, the desire to reconnect with the brave men of old. Afterwards there was a mighty war in which all the Hellenes joined and devastated our country, which was very ungrateful of them. And our countrymen, after defeating them in a naval engagement and taking their leaders, the Spartans, at Spagia, when they might have destroyed them, spared their lives and gave them back, and made peace, considering that they should war with their fellow countrymen only until they gained a victory over them, and not because of the private anger of the state destroy the common interest of Hellas, but that with barbarians they should war to the death. Worthy of praise are they also who waged this war, and are here interred, for they proved, if anyone doubted the superior prowess of the Athenians in the former war with the barbarians, that their doubts had no foundation, showing by their victory in the civil war with Hellas, in which they subdued the other chief states of the Hellenes, that they could conquer single-handed those with whom they had been allied in the war against the barbarians. After the peace there followed a third war, which was of a terrible and desperate nature, and in this many brave men, who are here interred, lost their lives. Many of them had won victories in Sicily, whether they had gone over the seas to fight for the liberties of the Leontians, to whom they were bound by oaths, but owing to the distance the city was unable to help them, and they lost heart and came to misfortune. They lost heart. That is very beautiful. Don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. Their very enemies and opponents winning more renown for valor and temperance than the friends of others. If you fear you're going to lose your heart, then just give it to me. I will hold it safe for you. Many also fell in naval engagement at the Hellespont, after having in one day taken all the ships of the enemy and defeated them in another naval engagement. And what I call the terrible and desperate nature of the war is that the other Hellenes, in their extreme animosity towards the city, should have entered into negotiations with their bitterest enemy, the king of Persia, whom they, together with us, had expelled, him without us. They again brought back barbarian against Hellenes, and all the host, both of Hellenes and barbarians, were united against Athens, and then shone forth the power and valor of our city. Our enemies had supposed that she was exhausted by the war, and our ships were blockaded at Mytilenum. But the citizens themselves embarked and came to the rescue with 60 other ships, and their valor was confessed by all men. And they conquered their enemies and delivered their friends. And yet by some evil fortune they were left to perish at sea, and therefore are not interred here. Ever to be remembered and honored are they, for by their valor not only that sea fight was won for us, but the entire war was decided by them. and through them the city gained the reputation of being invincible, even though attacked by all mankind. And that reputation was a true one, for the defeat which came upon us was our own doing. We were never conquered by others, and to this day we are still unconquered by them. But we were our own conquerors and received defeat at our own hands. I was thinking of Plato as I was reading this last part, and I'm wondering to what extent it was him who had the desire to write this history and then put it in. And why did he put it in? I mean, the laws are, I think, I'm going to read the laws again on the 20th and the 22nd of June, because it takes place on Midsummer's Eve, but I have other plans for Midsummer. So I want to read it the day before and the day after. So I'll probably not do any 15-minute reading that day, because it's not going to take only 15 minutes. What was I saying? Oh yeah, Plato does seem to have this desire to write speeches and to write histories, especially histories. I'm reading What is Ancient Philosophy by Pierre Daou again, and Historia apparently was the beginning of the search for wisdom and knowledge, so the beginning of philosophy. And I do see it, the love of history. One of the wisest men I've ever known was a professor in history. I've lost my point. Oh yes, why? But no, never mind. Have a beautiful day.